Mom called me selfish for not babysitting her precious grandkids. You never helped this family, she yelled. I said nothing. Then I stopped paying the mortgage, and suddenly, it wasn't the screaming that broke me. It wasn't even the word selfish spat from across the living room like a curse. It was the way my mother said it, like she believed it. Like the last 7 years of my life meant absolutely nothing. You never helped this family, she yelled, her eyes narrowed, mouth trembling, not from sadness but rage. And my sister Leah, not to be outdone, chimed in with, Seriously, Jake? You're just a bachelor with no real responsibilities. You can't even help with your own niece and nephew? That was the moment everything stopped. Not in the dramatic, crash of thunder sense. It was quiet. Just this strange, heavy silence that settled in my chest. And I said nothing. I just nodded. Then I walked out the front door. But let me back up, because this story didn't start with that blow-up. No, it started years ago, the night my father died, and something in me clicked into survival mode. I was 25 when the heart attack took him. Unexpected, fast, brutal. I remember standing at the foot of his hospital bed, not even really believing it had happened. He had been the glue, the quiet force that kept everyone in orbit. Without him, gravity stopped working. So I stepped in. There was no grand speech, no dramatic vow. I just started paying the mortgage on my mother's house. Quietly. She had no income of her own back then, not since she quit her job to care for Dad in his final months. I picked up her utility bills too. Then the property taxes. Then the unexpected credit card debt that surfaced months later, $11,400 she'd never mentioned. She cried when I found out. I paid it. And Leah? Leah was already struggling with her ex at that point. 2 kids under 5 and a string of bad decisions wrapped in court dates and eviction notices. So I covered her rent for a while. Paid off her car when the repo notice came. Even gave her my Saturdays for a little help. That eventually became full weekends watching her kids so she could have just one night to breathe. I didn't complain. Not once. Because I thought that's what family did. I thought if I just kept showing up, if I kept proving my worth quietly over time, they'd see me. They'd finally see me. But that day? That moment in the living room when I asked, once, to not babysit after working 16-hour shifts for 3 weeks straight? When I said, I just need this one weekend to myself. They acted like I'd set the house on fire. And that's when it hit me, they didn't just not appreciate what I'd done. They didn't even remember it. All they saw when they looked at me was a single guy with a job and a spare bedroom. Not a man who was slowly drowning under the weight of other people's lives. That night something shifted. Something permanent. And it started with a few simple clicks. I didn't pack a bag. Didn't slam a door or raise my voice. I walked out of that house like I was stepping out of a meeting. Just a nod to myself and a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding for years. I drove home in silence. No music. No podcasts. Just the sound of my tires on pavement, and my thoughts finally speaking up after years of being told to sit down. When I got home, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, staring at my laptop. The bank login screen stared back, like it was waiting for me to blink first. I didn't. I opened the tab for my automatic payments. There they were, the monthly mortgage on my mom's house, the utilities in her name, the emergency fund transfer I'd set up for my sister. Just in case. The numbers were staggering when you line them up like that. I had never added them all together before. I hovered over the cancel button like it was some kind of detonator. Then I clicked. First the mortgage. Then the gas and electric. Then the internet. Finally, the Venmo auto transfer that sent Leah $300 every Friday like clockwork. Click. 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 Gone. The family group chat? Deleted. Phone numbers? Blocked. It wasn't anger, not really. It was peace. Cold, sure, but clean. Like stepping out of a storm you didn't know you were in. I didn't leave a note. No long text explaining what I was doing. I'd spent years justifying my worth to people who only noticed me when I wasn't doing enough. I was done giving them the satisfaction of an explanation. That night, I slept better than I had in years. The silence was beautiful while it lasted. It took 2 days before the first text broke through, Leah, of course, slipping through on her work number I hadn't thought to block. "Hey, your Venmo didn't go through. Did you forget?" I didn't respond. Then came the calls from my mom. Unknown number. Voicemail. "Jacob. The mortgage bounced. I called the bank and they said the account's been closed. What's going on? Call me." By the end of the week, it turned into something more desperate. "I don't know what kind of stunt you're pulling, but we're behind on everything. Your sister can't afford groceries. You need to grow up and stop being petty. You're tearing this family apart." Each message was like an echo of a script they'd rehearsed for years. I didn't flinch. Not anymore. I spent that week doing something I hadn't done in years, looking for something for me. A new job. A new city. Somewhere I didn't have to be someone else's lifeboat. I found it almost by accident. A job opening in Asheville, smaller company, better work-life balance, and a balcony that overlooked the Smokies in the listing photo. I applied that night. 3 days later, I got the offer. I signed the lease on a modest one-bedroom with morning light and quiet neighbors. I bought furniture for me, things I actually liked. A real coffee maker. A bookshelf. A leather chair that wasn't second-hand. I didn't tell anyone I was moving. I changed my number. Forwarded my mail to a P.O. box. The only person who knew was my best friend Ryan, and even he didn't get the full address. I vanished. And it was easier than I thought it would be. The last thing I left behind was the key. I slid it under the door of the house I'd once called home, my mother's, technically, but I had paid for every shingle on that roof. No note. No goodbye. Just a single key on the welcome mat, like a period at the end of a long, messy sentence. I didn't look back. A week later, I was in Asheville. New job, new bed, new silence. Not the aching kind, the good kind. The kind where the only voice I heard was my own. I started sleeping full nights again. Started cooking meals that weren't just takeout eaten over bills. Started running in the mornings, just because I could. It was strange, the way healing crept in. There was no dramatic moment. No swelling music. Just room. Space to be. Space to breathe. And that space filled up with little things. The sound of birds at sunrise, the smell of coffee in my new kitchen, the light that poured across my living room floor in the mornings like a quiet blessing. For the first time in years, I wasn't exhausted. I wasn't waiting for the next crisis. I didn't have to live on call for people who would never say thank you. And then, one day, a message slipped through. A mutual friend. Neutral territory. A guy named Dave who used to work with me back in the city. "Hey man, not sure if you heard, but your mom's house got foreclosed. Leah and the kids are living with your cousin Brian now. Whole thing's a mess. Just thought you should know." I stared at the message for a long time. Not out of shock. I'd seen it coming like a slow-moving train. What surprised me was how little I felt. Not bitterness. Not guilt. Just relief. The thing about walking away is, you expect guilt to chase you. I thought maybe it would hit me in the quiet moments. In the grocery store when I passed the cereal my niece used to love. In the parking lot when I saw a car like my mom's. I thought I'd feel some kind of moral gravity pulling me back toward them. But it never came. I realized that guilt had always been their favorite tool. They sharpened it with words like family and obligation. Used it like a leash. And for so long, I'd worn it like it was mine. But now I saw it for what it was, a lie wrapped in sentiment. A debt I never agreed to. I wasn't a husband. I wasn't a father. I wasn't their personal bailout fund. I was a man in his 30s who had given too much of himself to people who never asked what it cost. And now I had my life back. I started writing again, just little things, journals mostly. Sketching out thoughts I never had time to think before. Dreams I'd boxed up when Dad died. I signed up for a woodworking class on a whim and built a coffee table with my own 2 hands. Sturdy. Quiet. Mine. Sometimes I'd hear stories about them, my mother telling neighbors I had abandoned the family, Leah claiming I walked out when they needed me most. I even heard from that same mutual friend that they were telling people I had a breakdown. Maybe I did. A breakdown of old patterns. Of inherited guilt. Of the idea that love means sacrifice, always at your own expense. If that's a breakdown, then it was the best thing that ever happened to me. The first season passed in peace. Fall turned to winter, and I celebrated the holidays alone for the first time in my life. No casseroles, no screaming kids, no pretending to laugh at Leah's eye-roll-worthy jokes or smile while Mom handed me a sweater 2 sizes too small. I made a roast. Bought a tiny fake tree. Lit a candle that smelled like pine. Sat on my couch, plate in lap, watching the snow drift outside the window of my apartment like something out of a movie. And for once, I didn't feel like something was missing. The world didn't end. I didn't crumble without their chaos. In fact, I started feeling, what's the word? Whole. It was maybe mid-January when the next attempt came. An email this time. Subject line, from your mother. It sat in my inbox for 3 days before I opened it. Part of me was curious. Another part of me was bracing for the manipulation. But it was short. Just 4 lines. I don't know where you are now. I hope you're okay. We've had a rough time since you left. I wish you hadn't given up on us. There was no apology. No ownership. Just that subtle twist of words, you gave up on us. Like I was the one who walked away from a warm, loving family instead of being drained dry by a one-sided relationship. I didn't respond. The thing they never understood is this. I didn't walk away out of spite. I walked away because staying was killing me, slowly, quietly, invisibly. I kept thinking about the time Leah yelled, "You're just a bachelor with no real responsibilities." Funny thing is, she was right. I didn't have kids. I didn't have a spouse. But I had responsibilities. To myself. To the boy who watched his dad drop dead on the living room floor and decided, at 25, that he had to be strong for everyone else. To the man who gave up vacations, hobbies, relationships, because there was always one more bill, one more emergency, one more ask. To the future I had postponed so many times I forgot it existed. That future had finally arrived. It didn't come with fireworks. It came with sunrises. With quiet mornings and the smell of fresh coffee. With the thrill of buying something I wanted without doing the mental math of who else needed help first. They didn't understand why I left. But I finally did. There was a moment, maybe 2 months into the new job, when I realized I was starting to smile without realizing it. Not a polite smile. Not the kind you put on when someone expects it. I mean the real thing. Soft. Easy. Like my body finally remembered what it felt like to be mine. I had this coworker, Nate. Real laid-back guy. Wore hiking boots to meetings and kept granola bars in every drawer. He invited me out for a group hike one Saturday. Normally, the old me would have passed. Too tired. Too busy. Or maybe just too used to saying no to myself. But I went. We hiked this trail that wound up to a ridgeline, and when we reached the top, it opened into this view, rolling hills, morning mist, and the kind of silence that doesn't beg to be filled. I remember standing there, letting the wind hit my face, and thinking, so this is what it's like to be free. And the craziest part? No one needed anything from me. No one called while I was gone. No one asked where I was, or why I wasn't at home helping fix a clogged sink or pick up my sister's kids or transfer $300 because her ex missed child support again. No one needed me. I only had myself. And that used to scare me. But now it felt like flying. It wasn't just the new city. It wasn't just the job or the hikes or the silence. It was that I had finally met a version of myself untouched by obligation. I was learning who I was without being a provider. Without being the backup plan. Without the invisible cape I wore so long I forgot I could take it off. And the truth? I liked him. He was quiet, yes, but steady. He read books again. He went for runs in the evening and watched documentaries for fun. He'd started talking to a woman named Maya from the office downstairs. Nothing serious, just coffee now and then. But she laughed at his jokes. Not because she needed something, but because she wanted to. Imagine that. It wasn't until the third month that it really sank in. That no one was coming to save me. And I didn't need them to. Because I had already saved myself. There was this afternoon, late March. I had just come back from the farmer's market, juggling a bag of fresh bread and too many peaches I didn't need, and I caught my reflection in the window as I unlocked the door to my place. I stopped. It wasn't just that I looked different. It was something deeper. I was standing differently. Shoulders back. Face calm. A man at rest, not just a man recovering. And I realized then, I had stopped flinching. Stopped flinching every time my phone buzzed. Stopped bracing for guilt. Stopped living with one foot in someone else's crisis. It felt like getting out of a toxic relationship I didn't even know I was in. One night, maybe 2 weeks later, Dave, the mutual friend, texted me again. "Hey, your mom's trying to track you down." She called me. I just stared at the message for a second, then asked, "What did she say?" "Said she doesn't know where you are. That it's not right for a son to disappear on his family. She asked if you were mentally okay." I laughed out loud at that one. The irony. They couldn't understand that my silence wasn't a symptom, it was healing. For the first time in years, I wasn't explaining myself to people who never listened. And maybe that's what scared them most. I told Dave, "Please don't give her my info. I'm good. Really." He waited a few minutes before replying. I figured. "You seem different. Lighter, even over text." He wasn't wrong. I was lighter. Like I had dropped the weight of 1,000 unspoken expectations and finally had room to stand up straight. And here's the thing, they didn't just lose a mortgage payer or a babysitter when I left. They lost the one person who never asked for anything. The person who showed up without needing to be asked. Who remembered birthdays, fixed the broken steps, took late-night calls, stayed home when others got to play. They lost me. And I think somewhere deep down they knew it. Because when people lose their crutch, they don't just fall, they panic. I heard they tried to apply for assistance after the foreclosure. That Leah cried to my cousin about how she had nowhere to go. That my mom started telling neighbors she had one child who abandoned the family. And another who's too burdened to step up. But those weren't the consequences of my actions. They were the result of years of taking without giving. Of leaning without thanking. Of assuming I'd always be there just because I always had been. They built their lives on the assumption that I would never leave. And then I did. Spring arrived like a quiet celebration, blooming dogwoods, warm breezes drifting in through my screen door, the kind of air that makes you believe in new beginnings. I was sitting out on the balcony one morning, sipping black coffee from a chipped ceramic mug I'd picked up at a local craft fair. The sun was rising over the Smoky Mountains, washing the treetops in gold, and I felt still. Not empty. Not lonely. Just still. And then my phone buzzed. Blocked number. I didn't answer. I let it go to voicemail, but I already knew who it was. Later, when I listened to the message, it was my mother. Her voice, familiar but somehow smaller, crackled through the speaker. "Jacob, please. I don't know where you are. I don't even know if you're okay. I just want to talk. We all make mistakes, but this disappearing act, this isn't you. It's not the boy I raised." There was a pause. I could hear her trying not to cry. "Leah's struggling. The kids, they miss you. I know you're angry. I know you think we took you for granted. Maybe we did. But please, Jacob. Please come home." I played the message twice. The first time, I listened like a son. The second time, I listened like a man who had spent his entire adult life sacrificing himself for people who didn't see him until he was gone. And I realized something. She didn't miss me. She missed what I did. She missed the bills getting paid, the calls getting answered, the way I filled every crack they didn't bother to seal themselves. Because if she missed me, she would have seen me before I vanished. She would have looked at me all those nights I sat at the dinner table, exhausted and quiet, and asked if I was okay. She would have told me thank you, just once. But she didn't. None of them did. So I deleted the voicemail. That was the last time she tried. Maybe she got the message. Maybe she didn't. But it didn't matter anymore. Because I wasn't lost. I hadn't disappeared. I had simply moved out of orbit from a solar system that fed off me like a sun, and I had built my own sky. A quiet life, yes. But one that was mine. And I had no intention of ever going back. It was a Tuesday. I remember that because Tuesdays used to be the worst: midweek burnout, unpaid bills, voicemail bubbles stacking up like little red grenades. But this Tuesday? I woke up before my alarm. No rush. No dread. Just light spilling through the curtains and the sound of birds somewhere beyond the trees. I walked barefoot into the kitchen. Made coffee slowly. The good kind, not the freeze-dried stuff I used to survive on when I was working 2 jobs and still somehow broke. And then I stepped out onto the balcony. The sun was rising over the mountains, just like it had every morning since I got here, but this one felt different. The kind of different you only notice when you've lived through a life that never lets you pause. I wrapped both hands around the mug and leaned against the railing. The air was cool. Sweet. The kind of air that feels earned. And in that moment I smiled. Not because I had won. Not because they had lost. But because, for the first time in my life, I chose myself. No phone buzzing. No drama waiting in my inbox. No more proving. No more justifying my worth to people who weighed my value in silence and sacrifice. Somewhere, my old house stood empty. Somewhere, Leah was telling people I ran off and left them to fend for themselves. That I abandoned my family. That I wasn't well. And maybe they believed her. Maybe they didn't. But I wasn't trying to rewrite the story they told. I was writing a new one, with no audience. No applause. No guilt baked into the margins. Just a quiet, honest life, built brick by brick, sunrise by sunrise, on my own terms. So no, I didn't go back. I won't. Because peace like this? It isn't loud. It doesn't need permission. And it doesn't come with a return address.